Hey all, how are you? My name's Adam Jason. I am the founder of BRRRRinvest.com, where we leverage my decade of BRRRR investing experience, legal experience to help make your goals of wealth creation, financial freedom through the BRRRR strategy easier to achieve than ever before. Today I want to make this video and talk about and compare the BRRRR strategy versus investing in turnkey properties. A lot of people will say, okay, what's better for me? There's factors that each one have kind of their pluses and minuses, and I see a lot of conversation in our Facebook group and elsewhere about which is really better. And when you kind of look at things comprehensively, from ease of access to downside risk, and which is really better for my portfolio. So I want to talk today about kind of the pros and cons of each, and tell you what my preference is, and of course allow you guys to make that decision for your own portfolio. And maybe you're doing a mix of them, but it's good to understand kind of what you're getting yourself into with each of them and how they align with your goals. So let's quickly put some definitions around the terms that we're talking about. So when we talk about the BRRRR strategy, there we're really talking about kind of the long-term buy and hold with a rehab process that you go through before you're putting in a tenant into your property. And of course, that's combined with the refinance portion of the BRRRR strategy that we all love, because that's returning to us our capital that we put into projects initially. In the turnkey situation, you're really buying a property that might even already have a tenant in place, but that on day one is going to be potentially cash flowing to you if the numbers work, and you could get a tenant in relatively easy without having to undergo a rehab process before you're doing that. So kind of what are the ways to think about these, and what's best for you? I think all of this always comes down to a question of goals, what you're looking to do, how much time you can commit to real estate investing without, going through the process of building a team and making it really into a business. But what does this really, what does your time really permit, and what are your goals? I think if your goals are wealth creation and really building a lot of equity in real estate, the BRRRR strategy is just going to be better for you. Why is that? BRRRR strategy kind of relies on the fact that you're buying properties for under market value. So, a house in a market is typically, let's say, $200,000. In the BRRRR scenario, you're buying that for 75%, 80% on the dollar, or less if you can possibly do it, which gives you a lot of equity after you're able to do a rehab and turn that property around. If you're buying it for $150,000 and you put $25,000 of rehab into it, and you're getting it to $225,000, you have a substantial equity portion that you're building right out of the gate. If you're investing in turnkey properties, really kind of all that equity is already been absorbed, and you're betting on future appreciation, which I don't personally love to do. I like to kind of have that cushion in case there's a drop in the market, and just to know that from the time you buy, you really have a good investment, and you're making your money when you buy, as people like to preach in real estate investing. If you're buying turnkey properties, a lot of times you're buying them from providers, people who are sourcing those deals for you, and they're going to kind of have taken all of that equity off the table for you before they're doing the sale. So if you're buying these properties at market value, which is kind of what you should expect to see in a turnkey scenario, unless you can find a property in your market that really requires no rehab and is something that you can get a tenant into immediately but is still well below market price. Maybe you find a distressed asset in some situation, or somebody has to sell and move immediately, or has had some kind of life circumstance that requires that. You're really going to be betting on that future appreciation to occur, which I think can be challenging and is obviously risky, because we just don't know what's going to happen in the future when it comes to the markets. In terms of ease of access and what's better for somebody from that perspective, the BRRRR strategy has steps involved, from buying a property, finding a great deal, which is not always simple to do, rehabbing the property, getting the tenant in place, going through the refinance process. a lot more, I guess, potential steps and rooms for hiccups than you might find in a turnkey scenario. That said, using the BRRRR strategy and of course putting the work in is what you should be getting paid for, and what that equity should be compensating you for, because you have to put your time in, you have to put the work in that's necessary to make the project successful. But it likely will require more time, especially when you are starting out. If you're in the process of finding a property manager, finding a contractor, negotiating with them, thinking about whether they're going to do the project correctly, in that process of acquiring some properties, but also building your team where there's a lot of oversight required and management, it definitely can be some work to get started. But once you get that in place, once you have your criteria around the properties that you like to invest in, if it's single family homes, multifamily, whatever it is, and also around that location, you have your team in place, you can really do a lot of deals quickly and confidently, and not kind of sacrifice have that huge time commitment that would come if you are just getting started. So everything takes time, and it's just building things over that period, and then you can kind of really hit your stride and start running when you know exactly what you're willing to make offers on, when you have a contractor and property manager in place that you trust, when you really know your market, the rents, the kind of tenants that you can expect. It all becomes a lot easier. If you are trying to avoid that process, just don't have the time to kind of go through those building blocks and building that team, turnkey is good for you, because you cut out the construction process. You might already be buying a property from a property management company that is able to either pair you with somebody who can manage the property, or they do it themselves and they have a track record. Of course, doing diligence on that is important, but it really allows you to just dive into a potentially cash flowing asset relatively quickly. But again, you're hurt on the back end, I think, a little bit, unless you see some substantial appreciation in that market, because all of that's going to be kind of taken away from you before you go that route. The other thing about the BRRRR strategy that, of course, is fabulous and that we love, and the reason I do it for my own portfolio, is the ability to refinance and pull money back out of properties and deploy them into additional assets. When you're going through the refinance, now you're seeing it, but basically the general rule is that you're going to be able to get refinances on your properties for about 75 to 80% of their market value. Obviously, the goal with the BRRRR strategy is to leave as little of your own capital in projects as you possibly can. So the goal would be to kind of limit your expenditures for the acquisition of the property, closing costs, rehab, to about 75–80% of what you're going to be what that property is going to be worth after you do that rehab and at the time that you go for your refi, so that when you do that refinance, you get as much of your capital back, hopefully all of it, that you can be putting back into deals. That's the goal with the BRRRR strategy, and that's why it's so powerful. If you're doing things on the turnkey side, of course you can refinance if it makes sense down the road, but chances are it's going to be very challenging to get all of your money back and not be in a situation where you're at least leaving a good chunk of money in that project, because you're going to be limited on how much the property is appreciated since the time of acquisition. So in the BRRRR situation, where you're getting back all your money because your costs never exceeded 75% of the total value, if you're paying market value for the property and you have closing costs, and again, under our hypothetical $200,000 property, if the property is $200,000 and that's the market value and you're paying $200,000, obviously it's going to be very tough to pull all of your capital back out when you refinance, because you're just not going to be able to get to that 75–80% threshold, and the bank's not going to see kind of the appreciation that you would hope for. So it's something to consider. I think when you're asking yourself this question, Again, it's a goal question, time commitment question, how fast do you want to get into these properties, and also what's your long-term objective. If you're just really looking for immediate cash flow and rolling into that, Turnkey can be great. If you're looking for that equity build up continuously, being able to roll your capital over into additional projects, then the BRRRR strategy is going to be great for you. And of course, it's the one I choose and I prefer because I put the time in to build a team. I can now do BRRRR deals just as fast as somebody could do turnkey deals by going to a provider and finding those properties. I want to give you the same access that I have to the tools and resources that I use to build my portfolio. If you go to BRRRRinvest.com, there we have deal analysis tools, the contracting solution, which I think is the real value add and the one that's going to help you the most, so that you're using all of the most beneficial contract provisions when you're signing up your contractor, your property manager, your tenant, all the things that I've built as an attorney over the last 10 years for my own portfolio and for my clients. And I think it's worth taking the time to spend and think about your goals, what you want to do. Is turnkey appropriate for you? Is BRRRR appropriate for you? With us, you can analyze deals under both scenario and see what things might look best for you. So take that time, understand what your goals, your objectives are. Hope this video was helpful for kind of giving you a sense of some different investment strategies that are out there, what might suit your portfolio best, and I will talk to you in the next video. Thanks.